Hello, and welcome back to yet another NFL team ranking. We have reached, well, we have passed the halfway mark, and now we are entering the territory of teams who exclusively I am expecting to make the playoffs. Now, I think just based off a numbers game here, it's what, 7 teams per conference? We got 15 teams left, so it's pretty much guaranteed that one of these here will miss the playoffs. And it is overwhelmingly likely that at least one of the teams in my prior videos will make the playoffs. But with that being said, let's some of these really good teams and some of these teams that get me really they really get me going. The better the team, the better the quality, the more hype I am to talk about them. So let's get right into it. As always, thank you for watching. Trusty Google Slides. Where would I be without them? And the team that I have placed here at number 15 is going to be none other than now. I live in Georgia, so I may or may not have more in depth been forced to watch a lot of Falcons games over the years, just television, area location and stuff that I didn't want to watch. Last season, there were a lot more entertaining Falcons games than years prior, and especially towards the end of the season when they made the decision to cut bait with Kirk Cousins rather, and go forward with Michael Penix. It was real exciting. Every one of those games was, the last 2 games rather were barn burners. It was really, interesting to see. And I do feel like the Falcons are moving in the right direction here. Now, they did fail to reach the playoffs or have a winning record, which I believe is now like 7 years in a row of them having a losing record. But they were a top 10 offense last season, even with Kirk Cousins, the first, 14 games. And when they did make the decision to move to Michael Penix, those final 3 games, they averaged 32 points per game over that span. Now, it's a relatively small sample size, and the rest of the offense had all going by that point. But it's interesting to see just how much they were struggling in the month prior with Kirk Cousins at the helm. Once they make that change to Michael Penix, the offense explodes, and they were seemingly unstoppable for those last couple of games. Now, they were a bottom 10 defense, and they only had 31 total sacks, making them one of, if not the worst defensive line units in the whole league, really. So that is certainly an area that they need to improve on. And the head coach, Raheem Morris, he made his money coming up as a defensive guy. He was the defensive coordinator for the Rams, if I'm not mistaken, before taking the head coaching job of the Falcons. So if he does not get that unit specifically together this year, this could be his final season in only second year as the Falcons head coach. They do need their first winning record this decade, their first winning record since like 2017 or 2018, I think. And they need to improve their standing within the division. Luckily for them, the Saints took a massive step backwards this offseason. They lost 1 game to the Saints last year, just, assuming here that should be a team that you're able to sweep next season. They split with the Panthers last year. I don't think it would kill them to split with the Panthers again last year, but luckily for them, and they wasted this opportunity. They swept the team who won the division, the Buccaneers. They won both of their games against Tampa Bay. I don't expect them to replicate that in 2025. So if you can split with Tampa Bay and Carolina and sweep the Saints, the Falcons need at least 4 division wins, I feel like, if they want to reach my projected record of 9 or 10 wins. I do expect the Falcons to be a playoff team, even though I don't expect them to win their division. Now, going forward here, let's talk about what they were exactly last season. Now, Kirk Cousins, it's interesting, right? Because if you just watched his 2 games against the Buccaneers, you would have thought Kirk Cousins was playing at an MVP level, and he completely revived his career last season in Atlanta. Now, besides those 2 games, Buccaneers, he really was terrible. So we got those 2 games and the other 12 games he played. In the other 12 games, he went 5-7, he had a losing record, and he led the league in interceptions, even though he only played 14 games. He could not move the ball down the field. He especially struggled in the last couple games, notably against the Raiders and Chargers, and that resulted in him being benched. Now, you look at coming in, his numbers and his ratings because it says he threw 3 interceptions. I can personally guarantee you I watched all three of those interceptions, and a grand total of zero were on the fault of Michael Penix. Every one of his three interceptions, he hit his target in all 10 fingers. So I don't know how it's even possible that he managed to throw three interceptions, but that is entirely on the fault of the receivers. Michael Penix made the right read, the right throw, and everything right, and somehow he got three interceptions. And also, both of his losses came in overtime games against the Commanders and Panthers, in which he and the offense put up an amazing performance, but did not have an opportunity to score in overtime because the other team's offense got the ball first, drove down the field, and won the game. So it's like he didn't have a single interception worthy play in the three games he played. He played well enough to win all three of the games he played, but he lost two overtime games because his defense did not give him a chance. It's crazy to think about, but that's just what happened with him last year. But I think just based off that sample size, Falcons fans should be extremely optimistic, and a big part of that is that their running back duo of Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier, if it's not the best in the league, because maybe you think Jameer Gibbs and David Montgomery or maybe Bucky Irving, Rashad White. Quite personally, I'm definitely taking Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier over anybody besides those two guys in Detroit because they combined for over 2,600 yards last season, 18 touchdowns to just one fumble. This is an elite duo. Tyler Algier as a backup in just 150 touches, putting up over 700 yards, three touchdowns. And we know how good Bijan Robinson is. He is, if not one of, I mean, top four, top five running backs in the entire game. I mean, you got to go Saquon, Derrick Henry, Jameer Gibbs. Is he the next guy up? Maybe a healthy McCaffrey. I can't see Bijan being any lower than top five just by my estimations. Then you got your years last season from both Drake London and Darnell Mooney. Who would have thought you had, both of these guys stepping up? And like I said earlier, even though you didn't love what Kirk Cousins did for you rather, it still was a high-powered passing offense. So you had multiple. I mean, you had four receivers with over 600 yards, and obviously Drake London, Darnell Mooney, uh, put forward the brunt of that. But Ray McLeod, who would have thought Ray McLeod would step up, have over 700 yards last season? He had way too many fumbles, but over 700 yards. He was certainly a surprise breakout player for them. And then Kyle Pitts, he still gets shit on all the time by Falcons fans and really everybody because he has not broke out. He has not lived up to the number 4 overall pick. But man, if you think 600 yards and 4 touchdowns from a tight end is terrible or disappointing, maybe it's disappointing. But if you think that's bad, I don't know what to tell you. Kyle Pitts is a good tight end. They're just upset that he's not a great tight end. Overall, the Falcons, in terms of just weapons, you can't get much better. Like the only thing I could really see here is if you had like a true number one all pro level pass catcher, but you make up for that by having a true all pro number one running back. So it's like the Falcons offense, you can't get much better for that, or you can't get much better than that rather. And Michael Penix, I'm talking too fast. He is in an elite situation. Cannot get much better. Now, defensively, I already mentioned earlier, it was not a very good unit, bottom 10. I mean, outside of Jesse Bates, I'm not sure they had a single Pro Bowl level player on the entire defense, and they had to make a major overhaul here. They brought in some 1 year rentals last year, like Matthew Judon and what's the other guy's name? Justin Simmons. So they brought in some vets to try and help out, but they really didn't make a whole lot of a difference. And they went in a lot of different directions this offseason. And I think they came out of that a little bit better than they were. Now, let's talk about the roster, new and improved. And while I talk about that, let me switch over here and take a look at their new offensive line. And when I say new offensive line, it's really the same offensive line. Now, they make a change at center, but not really a change at center. So they started last year with Drew Dahlman playing that spot for them. He got hurt around midseason. So Ryan Nuziel, who you see right there, he was their center for the majority of last season. He played about 600 snaps. He only gave up 1 sack. Now, he is not as good as Drew Dahlman, so you can say it's a slight downgrade at the center position, but you get points there for continuity since he played a lot with this team last season. Going into next year, I would expect him to get better. And here's the thing. Every guy besides Ryan Nuziel played over 1,000 snaps last season. Jake Matthews, Pro Bowl level left tackle. Matthew Bergeron, quickly improving. He was what was he, a second round pick in 2023? He seems to be getting better each year. Chris Lindstrom, one of, if not the best guards in the entire league for sure the best run blocker in football. I mean, his PFF grades in terms of run blocking, it's arguably the best in the league. And then Caleb McGarry at right tackle, you're more than comfortable with him playing that spot. So I really do like the Falcons' offensive line. And if you look at it, no changes. I mean, the Falcons' offense, this is what I like about it. It is identical to what it was those last 3 games of the season when Michael Penix was cooking up. So it's like, I think the Falcons looked at it, what they had that last month of the season, and they said, this is good enough. We like what we saw. We were rolling. If we just bring back these guys, get them healthy, get some more chemistry, obviously hope Michael Penix gets a little bit better of a grasp on the offense, they're more than comfortable rolling back out with the same unit. And I can't blame them. They were top 10, and they could be even better next season, which is a very scary thought to consider. Now, defensively, you see a bunch of changes here. And let me talk about them because it's even more than what appears on paper here. Now, they add in 4 players. Well, they're going to have 4 guys this year that they didn't have last year that should all be difference makers on this defensive line. You could even make the case for 5. Let's start off with Jalen Walker. The first round pick, he was their first round pick here. Coming in out of Georgia, he specializes as a pass rusher, but he also has experience as a stand up linebacker. So you can move him all around the defense. He also is good against the run. I see him as a guy who's versatile, who Raheem Morris can use in multiple different ways, and overall just makes whatever unit he's a part of, whether it's the linebacker or the edge rusher group, makes that unit better overall. They also trade back into the first round, give up a future first round pick to get their hands on James Pierce. He is such a difference maker that they were willing to give up a future first round pick just in order to bring him into their team. And I like it. I had a very high grade on James Pierce. I was higher than him. I was higher on him rather than most other people were. And I like the decision. If he's, if you got Jalen Walker kind of floating around, kind of sometimes coming off the edge, sometimes playing more of a stand-up linebacker role, James Pierce is going to be a guy who's always has his hand in the dirt, rushing off the edge. So he plays with extreme speed and finesse, and he could be a real difference maker for you there on that edge unit. Now, you also bring in Leonard Floyd, which is a really underrated, under the radar signing. Not a lot of people talking about this, but if I would have told you who has the most sacks the last 3 seasons, Leonard Floyd, Joey Bosa, Von Miller. Not a lot of people would pick Leonard Floyd, but the answer is Leonard Floyd. You could also throw on Hassan Reddick for that matter, because he did nothing last season. Leonard Floyd's a guy. He's never really broken out to be an all-pro, Pro Bowl level player, but you know for a fact he's going to give you 8, 8.5, 9, 9.5, 10 sacks, no matter where he is. He's done that consistently now the last 4 years. Different teams, different schemes, doesn't matter. Leonard Floyd, he's a productive guy who knows how to get after the quarterback. He's actually an upgrade over Matthew Judon, who they brought in last season, because Leonard Floyd, he's been consistent for years I just love that move. Nobody's talking about it, but he is better than anybody they had in that entire unit last season. That's a major upgrade there. You also bring in Morgan Fox. He was not that much of a difference maker for the Chargers last season, but if you look past that point with the Panthers, with the Rams, he's a guy who's been around similar to Leonard Floyd, and he's not on that level, but he is a guy who, if I had to play Morgan Fox 400, 500 snaps a season, I'd be very comfortable with that because he's shown me over time an ability to rush the passer, which the Falcons have been lacking now for a long, long time. Also, another under the radar guy, you bring back Braylon Trice. He was a 3rd round pick for you in last year's draft. He got hurt. He hardly played at all. He really didn't play at all last season. He led the Pac-12 in pressures in his last year and the last year of the Pac-12. He's a real guy who I think has a ton of potential, but he basically lost a year. He's coming in now as a part of this new draft class, essentially, with James Pierce, Jalen Walker. And man, to go from what they had last season to now Jalen Walker, James Pierce, and Braylon Trice all competing just for the opportunity to even see the field with vets like Morgan Fox and Leonard Floyd and Arnold Ebiketie, who they spent a 2nd-round pick on a couple years ago. He's been developing. I like this unit. The Falcons turned their weakest unit, which was their pass rush, into a strength in one offseason. It's incredible. And they did lose Grady Jarrett up the middle, but between guys like Ruka Roro, who you spent a 2nd-round pick on last year, David Onyemata, Brandon Dorlus, who spent a 4th-round pick on him last year, I feel like, and listen, Grady Jarrett, with all respect, he's not what he used to be, in the early 2020s, the late 2010s. He's not that guy anymore. It's not a major loss to the interior of this defensive line. I'm really happy with what I see out of the Falcons pass rush. And also on top of that, let's talk about the secondary here. So not really Jordan Fuller. That's not who I'm talking about. Quite frankly, anybody who was a part of the Panthers defense last season, I would kind of raise an eyebrow if you bring them into your team. I'm looking at Xavier Watts here out of Notre Dame. You spend like a late third round pick on the guy. I had him as a top 50 player. I thought he was going to go in the middle to late second round at the latest. You somehow, one of the biggest steals of the draft, you get Xavier Watts here at the end of the third round. And on top of that, do you know who Xavier Watts compares his player comp was coming into the league? Jesse Bates. You now have Jesse Bates, and according to experts, the next Jesse Bates as a part of the same safety group. You have two absolute ball hawks here in the secondary. Now, the problem with that is you may trade off a bit of tackling, as a result here, but just with all the improvements they've made to that front seven, the linebacker group remains relatively the same. Well, you bring in Jalen Walker, Divine Diablo, that unit also improves. So it's like, man, with the amount of upgrades they made to this group overall, I don't care if you give up a slight bit of tackling from your safety position. I am in love with the changes the Falcons made on the defensive end here because they were serious. They recognized that we got it offensively. They know their offense is good enough to make a run, but they realized that this defense needed an overhaul and they committed to it 100%. So I got a lot of respect for what the Falcons did this offseason in terms of improving their defense here. Let's take a look at the position groups overall here. Like I said, the offense remains identical. Quarterback, you could make a case just based off experience and the fact that we have to project what Michael Penix could look like, that they slightly got worse at quarterback. But man, Kirk Cousins led the league in interceptions, and he only played 14 games. I do not think we're going to see that out of Michael Penix, even though he is a gunslinger. So offense remains identical. Absolutely the most improved defensive line in football, in my opinion, just in terms of the volume of good players they added. Some through the draft, some through free agency, some through previous players just getting back healthy. So it's a literal combination of everything, making this Falcons defense so much better. And of course, Ryan Watts in that safety position makes that group better overall as well. So I love it, man. I'm absolutely in love with what the Falcons did defensively. And I would be shocked, truly shocked, if they did not somehow find a way to have a winning record next season. Something would have to go massively wrong. It would have to be an injury to Bijan Robinson. Michael Penix just doesn't know what he's doing. Raheem Morris is incompetent. It would have to be something major for them not to have a winning record next season, especially in the division they play in as well, where 4 wins should be almost guaranteed. They had 4 wins last year, and they weren't even that good of a team, so they absolutely need to win 4 games again. Next up, number 14 team in the league. This is where I had the Los Angeles Rams. I'm using their old logo because it's better. Quite frankly, I hate their new logo. But last year they went 10-7, right? And the shocking part about that is that they were actually below average offensively and defensively last season. They started 1-4. 1-4. Everybody was, up in arms. Should they trade Matthew Stafford? Is it all falling apart? What are they doing? And then they won 9 out of their next 11 games. They completely got the ship back on track and just closed out the season on fire. And then they took that into the playoffs where they shut down the Vikings in Arizona because they couldn't even play their home playoff game because of the LA Fires. And then they played a razor tight close game versus the Eagles in a snow game, I believe it was, and what turned out to be the closest game anybody played against the Eagles in the entire playoffs. Now, going into next season, it's tough, right? Because the Rams are one of these teams where it's like they do have some intangibles that don't make it into my rankings because I really just look at the roster and the improvements and things like that. So they do have a coaching quarterback duo that kind of transcends the rankings in a way. Like they have Super Bowl winning talent and experience, but it's like I can't quantify that. I can't see that. I can't feel that. So I have to kind of just underrate them a bit. I feel like if you ask most people, the Rams would be higher than 14, maybe even the top 10. And I don't blame them for that just based off what they saw last season down the stretch and in the playoffs. But it's like I look at the roster and it's like, man, I just don't know, right? So let's talk about the stats, right? Matthew Stafford, he kind of is. He had a Mahomes type season last year. What I mean by that is that similar to Mahomes, the stats really didn't blow you away last year. Like especially with Matthew Stafford's case, he had 3,700 yards, 20 touchdowns. Like this is not game breaking numbers like we've seen from Stafford in the past. And I think especially over these last 3 years from Stafford, you kind of have seen a decline, right? He's not what he was, when they won that Super Bowl in 2021. He's just not that same guy. But then you look all the way to the right and you see three fourth quarter comebacks in 5 game winning drives. That's what Stafford gives you. He can be average for the whole game, but in the fourth quarter, down the stretch, you know he's going to give you your best football, and especially in the playoffs as well. So it's like he it's just different, man. It's I can't I'm more focused on the numbers, but what I guess I should be focused on is what you see all the way on the right: game-winning drives, fourth quarter comebacks. That's what Stafford and Mahomes especially do better than anybody. So that's what makes him still a good quarterback, even though the numbers don't necessarily agree with that. Now, in terms of their skill position players, Kyron Williams has established himself, I feel like, as a true RB1. If you combine his numbers from last season with 2023 on top of that, you would see, okay, Kyron Williams, he's arrived. He's a top 10 running back, no questions about it. And also Puka Nakua, you could say the same thing about him, man. 11 games, over 1,000 yards. He's a guy where you don't have to question anymore. He broke on the scene as a rookie, one of the best rookie receiving seasons ever. I think he should have split the rookie of the year award with CJ Stroud, because that's just my opinion. But then he follows that up with still getting to 1,000 yards, you know, regardless of the injuries. It's incredible what you see out of him. And then you add in order to replace Cooper Kupp, who did a lot for them, but he's been too injury prone for them over the years. You replace Cooper Kupp with Devontae Adams, who he himself had 1,000 yards playing for the Raiders and the Jets last year. I mean, you want to talk about two guys who produce regardless of the situation? Puka Nakua, Devontae Adams. Is that not one of the now best receiving duos in football? Is it top three, top four? I'm not sure, but it's up there without a doubt. And the defensive line for the Rams here, it is amazing. I mean, where do I start? Jared Verse, the rookie, Byron Young 2 years ago, Braden Fiskey, the rookie from last season, Colby, was it Colby Turner or Colby Young? No, it's Colby Turner, right? Colby Turner from 2 years ago. The Rams built an elite defensive line in 2 drafts. They like it's a ridiculous thing about, but they absolutely hit on all 4 of those draft picks, and now they have created an elite unit which kind of carries the rest of the defense. To be honest, because like I said, it was not good last year. It was average at best, but arguably below average, depending on how you look at it. Take a look at this roster right here. Offensively, I mentioned it. Besides Devontae Adams, it's not a whole lot different. The running back room's identical. Quarterback, of course, you still got Stafford. Tight end is a position here that I think is fairly interesting because they traded out in the first round with the Falcons. They let the Falcons get back in to take Jared Verse. They traded out in the first round. They bring in Terrence Ferguson, which let's actually go back to the tight end position. Look at the receiver, running backs. Their top tight end they really didn't have a tight end position last year. The number one tight end, all due respect, former Seahawk, Colby Parkinson, didn't even have 300 yards. So now you get a healthy Tyler Higbee coming back. He missed pretty much the whole season. Add on to that the rookie second-round pick, Terrence Ferguson. I'm looking at a really exciting tight end duo for the Rams, which is something they didn't have at all last season. So I'm looking at that with a little bit of interest there. The offensive line here, if you would allow me to scroll to it quickly. Alaric Jackson, the left tackle, he's good. Not just above average, he's good. He missed some time last season, but when he was out there, he was a really solid left tackle for them. Steve Avila, second-round pick 2 seasons ago. He also missed time last season, but when he was out there, he was a good left guard. It appears that his development is moving in the right direction for them. Coleman Shelton, the center. Now, you would assume, right, that anybody who played for the Bears offensive line last season is just absolutely terrible. Now, Shelton played over 1,100 snaps last year in Chicago. However, the PFF grades say that he was good. Only 3 sacks allowed. High 60s in every category, which for an interior offensive lineman, that's good. If it was a tackle, high 60s, I would say it's average. For an interior offensive lineman, high 60s actually means they're good. So, yeah. I mean, I don't know who they had playing center for the last season, but to get Coleman Shelton, just based off his PFF grades, I would say that's a good move for them. Kevin Dotson, the right guard, damn near Pro Bowl level, over 1,000 snaps, over an 80 in terms of the PFF grades. It's a really good run blocker on top of that. And then Havenstein, the right tackle, he also, this is the thing, Steve Avila, Alaric Jackson, Havenstein, all missed significant time last season. Havenstein only played about 683 snaps, but PFF grades say he was good, not just above average, good. So assuming health, which is a major thing for this Rams offensive line, assuming health, I would say this is a really strong unit. I cannot find a weak point on their entire offensive line. I see a bunch of above average, good to very good. So I like what I see from the Rams offensive line here. And then going back to their receiving room, obviously Devontae Adams is the major addition. They bring back Tutu Atwell, who was their number three. Here's the thing. I think he's a really good number three. The problem with him is that they like due to injuries, he has to play a whole lot at the two, which is just kind of unfair to him because he's just not really that guy. So I like their receiving room. Like I said earlier, the addition of getting both of their tight ends now, I think the offense gets better overall. The real question here is that I do feel like Matthew Stafford is trending downwards, right? I feel like he's just lost a step. His arm's not what it used to be. I think I would rather have him than like the majority. Like if you were to, it's weird. Like if I was picking a team, right, and if it was like a complete shuffle of quarterbacks, and it gave me Matthew Stafford, right, and it's like you could either keep Stafford or press the button and get any other quarterback, any other starting quarterback in the league. I don't think I'd press that button. I think I'd just take my chance with Stafford. But it's like, I don't think he's top 10 anymore. A lot of people would say he is. I think he's a Hall of Famer, which a lot of people don't think he is. But in terms of right now, top 10, it's just 3 years in a row where I just don't think he's been elite. And I feel like he is trending downwards. But he is, he's really good in the fourth quarter still. So do we get a rejuvenated Stafford since this might be his last season? I don't know. But I do feel like their quarterback, at least on paper, it doesn't blow me away, which is kind of holding back from the rest of what should be a really good offense. It's weird, but on paper, they were below average last season. So it's tough to judge. It really is. Um, Defensively here, though, I mean, one second. Apologize for that. Getting back to the Rams defense here, obviously, like I said earlier, their defensive line is elite. They also, on top of that, make additions. They add in Poona Ford via free agency from the Chargers, a good pass rushing interior defensive lineman. They add in Josiah Stewart via the draft out of Michigan, third round pick. So they make improvements to what was already their strength, which was their defensive line. Their linebacker room, I feel like, is very weak. One of, if not the weakest in the entire NFL. They do draft Chris Paul Jr., who I like out of Ole Miss in the fifth round. I feel like that was a pretty good steal for them. Overall, still a very weak unit. You're expecting a rookie to be your best guy in that team. And their secondary, I got big questions here with their secondary. Now, Darius Williams, he was really good for them 2 years ago. Well, he was really good for them rather in their Super Bowl run. He was really good for the Jaguars, but they got rid of him for some reason. Last season for them, I don't know if he was necessarily what he used to be, but I think he's still your best guy in the entire secondary. In terms of the safeties, I don't love what I see here. Cam Curl is not that good in coverage. Cam Kitchens, now he had a really good rookie season, similar to Kalen Bullock in the Texans. But overall, it's a bunch of young guys and vets who I'm questionable at best on. So now here's the good news. A great defensive line could make the rest of the team better just based off how good they play. But I do feel like they're going to lose some games because the back end of their defense is not close to what the front seven is, or just the defensive line, rather, because the linebackers are weak overall. So it's tough, but I don't love what I see in the back end of the Rams defense. Now, looking overall here, quarterback identical, wide receiver definitely gets better via the addition of Devontae Adams. Running back remains the same. Tight end, obviously, Terrence Ferguson comes in via the draft. Tyler Higbee comes back healthy from injury. That's a major addition to that group. O-line remains the same, but it should be better just because of guys being healthy. I could have arguably put an up arrow there, but they have a good offensive line. I got no complaints there. Defensive line, like I said, already one of the best units in the entire league, gets better due to the additions they made this offseason. Linebacker, safety, cornerback all remains the same, but they're all weaknesses overall. So I wish they would have showed a little more, or I wish they would have shown a little bit more interest in improving the back end of that defense. I feel like they're kind of comfortable with some units that are not that good overall. So I have some major concerns there. Only doing two teams this video. My apologies. We will go back to three moving forward here. But yeah, thank you for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you are new, and I will get back to you shortly. Peace.